Welcome everyone to another Dolphin Communication Project Deep Dive webinar. We are very excited today. We are going to learn about a dolphin's guide to maintaining friendships. I think maybe some humans could benefit from a human guide. We are joined by Emma Chereskin. Emma uses bioacoustics to ask questions about animal communication systems and social networks, and especially in dolphins. She is pursuing her PhD at the University of Bristol, but she actually does her field work on the other side of the world in Shark Bay, Australia. So we are very, very, very grateful to have her here today, and I am going to pass it over to you, Emma.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get my screen shared and we can get rolling. All right, so does that look like a PowerPoint slide to everyone?
It does.
Okay, great. And before we get going, I'm going to make sure I have a little pointer so that I can point out some stuff on the slides for everyone.
Beautiful.
All right. So hi, everyone. My name is Emma Chereskin, and I'm a PhD candidate here at the University of Bristol, and I study dolphin communication and cooperation. Today, I'm going to be talking about the male dolphins of Shark Bay, Australia, and how they maintain decades-long friendships and navigate their very complex social lives. So when scientists refer to friendships, we are actually talking about social bonds. And this is the more scientific term for it. And a social bond is the relationship that one group member has with another, which is characterized by frequent and often affiliative interactions. So bonds can vary in their strength, and often we measure the strength of a bond as the time spent in close proximity with one another. And with the advent of new technology like drones or microphones, or D-tags, we can now also include interaction data. So grooming, food sharing, exchanging vocalizations to help further characterize an individual's social bonds. So why would it benefit animals to make close friends? Animals form groups when the benefits of doing so outweigh the costs. So maintaining numerous strong social bonds with others can lead to protection from predators or other competitors. It can lead to higher reproductive success and rates of offspring survival, resource acquisition and defense, such as territory, food, or females. And it can even lead to increased adult longevity due to lower stress levels. And the male dolphins that we're going to be talking about today are mainly focused on increasing their reproductive success. So the dolphins that our research group studies are the Indo-Pacific bottlenose dolphins. They are Tursiops aduncus, and they're actually a separate species from the common bottlenose dolphins that you might be familiar with in places like Florida or California or the UK. And Tursiops aduncus is found in shallower waters throughout the Indo-Pacific region, and they're actually smaller in size than the other common bottlenose dolphins. They only reach about maybe 8.5 feet in length. And they feed on small fish and cephalopods, and they're really intelligent creatures. They're highly social, and they live in open social groups with fission-fusion grouping patterns. So our particular research site is located in Shark Bay, Western Australia. And we've been collecting data in this population since 1982. So the research project actually just celebrated its 40th birthday last year. And our research spans a variety of disciplines. So we collect data on genetics, acoustics, behavioral data. So if you're interested in any of that other stuff, please feel free to check out some of our other research outputs. And we feel really lucky to be able to conduct our research at this particular site because it is home to a very unique population of dolphins. The male dolphins in this particular population form the most complex nested alliance structure of any animal outside of humans, at least that we know of. So there are 3 distinct levels to the nested alliance structure that we see in Shark Bay. And the core social unit, which is here outlined in bold. So from the core social unit, it consists of between 4 to 14 males. And from this unit, they recruit their first order allies. So they form pairs or trios to herd single females and gain access to paternities and to guard against thefts from other males. And 2 or more second order alliances can sometimes team up to form third order alliances, which is shown on the left, to offer increased support in the capture and defense of females. So males will begin to form these alliances in their early to mid teenage years, and the bonds or friendships that these males form can last for decades. So a lot of the males in our particular study that I'm going to talk about later have been in alliances with their other group members for over 20 years. And recent research has shown that the stronger the bonds are that you have with your alliance members, the greater your reproductive success will be. So maintaining these friendships is extremely important if you want to pass on your genes. So how do we go about determining these alliance relationships? In our population, we quantify bond strength as a measure of time spent together using what's called the simple ratio index, which is fancy statistical index. And since the societies here are open, meaning that the groups are not stable, they're not closed, time spent together is an indicator of true social preference. So we then identify the alliance structure using a combination of the bond strength and also functional behavior. So here we have a network showing a third order alliance with the core social units differentiated by color. So this whole network here is one third order alliance. And then you can see the different second order alliances are differentiated by color. So individuals are depicted by the circles, and the thickness of the lines connecting them shows how strong the bonds are, so how much time they spend together. So what's interesting to note here is that some males have comparable bond strength with some of their second order and third order allies. So if you look at the purple lines, you'll see that there's all about the same thickness. So why haven't they been grouped together in the same core social unit? And the answer lies in their behavior. So second order allies will assist in the theft and the defense of females, and we see that first order alliances recruit their members from within their second order alliance. So for instance, here we see Pasta, and you can see that he has a similar bond strength with Ridge as he does with Deet. But the reason why Ridges is not part of Pasta's second order alliance is because you'll never see them consorting females together. So Pasta can be seen consorting females with Deet. So this is an image of 3 male dolphins herding a single female out in front. So you'll never see Pasta and Ridges showing this behavior together. You'll only see Pasta doing that with Deet. And so that's why we use a combination of behavior and bond strength to determine these relationships. So third order allies can help you out if you need it, but they're not going to be your go-to buddies for getting females. So this is a lot to keep track of. So how are the dolphins managing to navigate all of this social complexity? So firstly, this type of social system places a really large cognitive demand on our dolphins, and so they have to rise to the occasion. So they have an extremely high level of intelligence, and in fact, they have one of the largest brain to body ratios in the animal kingdom. Secondly, they have to be able to distinguish between individuals. So dolphins have unique identity signals termed signature whistles, which are unique to each individual animal and function much like human names. So you can see a spectrogram of a signature whistle over here, and this is from a dolphin called Spirit. So a recent study has also shown that they can distinguish individuals by taste, so through urine. So they actually have a concept of identity that isn't tied to a particular modality. So next, it's been shown that dolphins possess an episodic-like memory, meaning they have the ability to access information from previous social experiences. So they can remember signature whistles that they haven't heard in over 20 years and remember social information from previous encounters. So for example, here, you see that 2 dolphins are having a bit of a tussle. So when a male has done something bad, his alliance members will definitely let him know, followed by a session of repairing those bonds because they remember that that individual is important for their alliance structure. So this social memory allows dolphins to form the concept of team membership. So meaning they can identify and categorize their allies based on their social history. So playback studies have revealed that dolphins will behaviorally respond to the signature whistles of their core social unit, regardless of the varying bond strengths within that unit. But they don't respond to their third order allies' signature whistles or to dolphin signature whistles outside of any of their alliance structures. So they've invested a lot of cognitive effort into this particular social structure. So now let's get into how exactly they maintain all of these really complicated bonds. So just like our human relationships, they do require a lot of effort. So our dolphins have multiple mechanisms for maintaining these social bonds, such as synchrony, touch, and sound. So today I'm going to focus a little bit more on sound because bioacoustics is my particular area of research. So talking about synchrony, it's been observed in humans and dolphins that synchrony can promote social bonding and also advertise alliance membership. So it's been demonstrated that synchronous activities such as marching or dancing together have positive effects on social bonding. And in humans, individuals can spontaneously synchronize their movements with one another, with people often being perceived as more social if they demonstrate more synchronization. So recent evidence has even suggested that synchronization with others can lead to the release of neurohormones like endorphins that can further assist in social bonding. So in our dolphin population, allied males will surface synchronously and perform synchronized displays while herding females to reduce tension and support social bonding. And again, it's also used to advertise their alliance membership. And the interesting thing is that synchrony used in a cooperative context has actually only really been found in humans and dolphins. So while other animals and other species may exhibit synchrony, it's often used in a more competitive manner. So if you think about like males doing mating displays to try and get females versus our dolphins and humans will often synchronize together in order to promote social bonding. So you can see here that males are synchronizing and I want you to keep your eye on, this is the female right here in the middle. So you'll be able to see the three males around her do a synchronized display while they're herding. So hopefully this is playing for everyone. But I hope that you can see that the three males behind the female are doing synchronized displays. And in a second, you'll see them turn around and then all synchronously converge behind her. There you go. So moving on to touch. So in many species and across numerous taxa, the frequency of physical grooming is a reliable measure of social bond strength and the extent to which two individuals can rely on each other for support. So for example, in meerkats, grooming rates are indicative of pair bond strength, and the rates of allopreening in parrots and corvids, so your crows and ravens and jackdaws, were positively correlated with the time spent in close physical proximity. So in non-human primates, it's been shown that affiliative contact is an important mechanism for strengthening social bonds. So in vervet monkeys, grooming rate is a reliable predictor of whether a grooming partner will respond to requests for aid, even among unrelated individuals, which fosters reciprocity and the maintenance of close social relationships. And in vampire bats, grooming is a really low-cost way to strengthen social relationships between individuals, which could lead to food sharing in the future. So it's really important to try and strengthen those bonds through touch. And so our dolphins actually do this too. So they don't groom each other the way that monkeys do. They will actually use their flippers to kind of rub up against one another, and you'll be able to see it a little bit more closely in this video. So the rubbing occurs between these two individuals here in the middle. So you can kind of see how that flipper comes out and is being rubbed along his conspecific there. So now moving on to sound. So this is my particular area of research. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about sound, and we're going to dive a little bit more in depth into sound. So in non-human primates, so monkeys and apes, numerous studies addressing vocal exchanges have shown that vocal exchanges can serve a social bonding function, similar to physical grooming, with vocal exchanges occurring more frequently between preferred social partners. So male chimpanzees were shown to be significantly more likely to join in pant hoot choruses if their short-term affiliative partners were also observed to be participating. And in female Japanese macaques and bonobos, they've been shown to have a higher rate of contact call exchanges with their favored social partners, whom they groom more frequently. But now we're going to explore vocal exchanges in dolphins, because the social bonding function of vocalizations in dolphins has not previously been explored. So what do we know now? We know that sound is an integral part of dolphin life. They live in a visually occluded environment, and sound is vital for foraging and keeping in contact with your group members. We know that male dolphins have a really large vocal repertoire consisting of clicks, pops, and whistles, and we're going to be focusing on whistles today. And we also know that signature whistles, or identity markers, are important for individual recognition and to maintain that group cohesion. So you can see over on the right here, all of these are different signature whistles that we used in one of our recent studies to examine the bonding effects of vocalizations. So all of these are different dolphins that we see in Shark Bay. But what about bonding? So we wanted to test whether vocal exchanges could actually serve a specific bonding function in our male alliances. So this is some of our recent research. So we have shown that species regularly use affiliative contact, such as grooming, to strengthen important social bonds. But as group size increases, so too does an individual's primary network of important social partners. So as larger groups increase competition for resources and possibilities for harassment, you need a larger coalition of close allies to protect you from those greater costs. But if not all relationships are maintained, a large group might fragment and reach a lower group size equilibrium. So in increasingly large group sizes, how does an individual maintain all of their relationships and still find time for feeding, sleeping, etc.? And how does an individual use all of the different mechanisms that I mentioned previously in order to promote social bonding with their partners? So in the early 1990s, a behavioral ecologist and anthropologist named Robin Dunbar predicted that in order to maintain the average human group of 200, 57% of an individual's total time would have to be devoted to social grooming. And that sounds like a lot. It sounds extremely unrealistic. So he proposed in his social bonding hypothesis that the origin of human language was actually rooted in the need for an alternate mechanism by which to service those social bonds, and suggested that vocalizations can function as a replacement for physical bonding. And vocalizations are quick to produce. They don't require physical proximity, and they're also really low effort. Versus on the other hand, physical bonding, such as grooming, requires more time, it requires the need for proximity, and it requires a higher effort. So the use of vocalizations as a replacement for physical bonding would allow individuals to groom at a distance. So to test this hypothesis in our Shark Bay dolphins, our research team conducted boat-based surveys to collect behavioral observations and acoustic data via a towed hydrophone array. And we identified signature whistles using the SIG-ID method and acoustic source localization. So the signature whistle identification method uses temporal patterning to identify signature whistles, and acoustic source localization allows us to pinpoint where the whistles are coming from to determine the identity of those specific whistles. So we defined signature whistle exchanges as two different signature whistles occurring within 1 second of each other. So if you look here, this is a signature whistle exchange between Kooks and Spirit, and I'm hoping that I can play. So it might be that that sound recording was a little bit too quiet for you guys to hear, but that was this recording here, but you can see the spectrogram here. So we further identified instances of affiliative petting and rubbing, as in the video that you saw where they were rubbing their flippers together. And then we also performed some statistical analyses using multi-membership generalized linear models and generalized linear mixed models, wherein social bond strength was our fixed effect and whistle exchanges and affiliative contact behaviors were our response variables. And I won't go too much into the statistics, but if anyone has any questions about the specifics of that, I'd be happy to answer them after the talk. So firstly, we used permutation tests to confirm that the observed patterns of vocal exchanges were non-random. And further analysis revealed that the vocal exchanges were more likely to occur between second order allies. even when we controlled for third order alliance membership. So you can see here that the majority of the vocal exchanges were taking place within the core social unit. There were some vocal exchanges that occurred between individuals of third order alliances, but we found no instances of vocal exchanges between members of different third order alliances. So there weren't any shared vocal exchanges between those. And as the second order alliance, again outlined here in bold, is the core social unit for our population, we decided to take a closer look at what was happening within the core social unit. So when we restricted our analysis to the core social unit or the second order alliance level, we found that the males had a higher rate of whistle exchanges with allies with whom they spend less time. So as dyadic bond strength, which again is a measure of time spent together, as that increases here on the x-axis, the vocal exchange rate actually decreased on the y-axis. So that gives rise to a negative relationship that you can see here. But the opposite was true of affiliative contact behaviors. So as bond strength increases, so too does the rate of affiliative contact behavior. And again, these data points are color-coded by alliances. So the different colors mean that the data points come from different dolphin alliances. So here you can see those same results depicted using social networks. So here, our social networks are determined using bond strength. So again, that proportion of time spent together, versus here, our social networks are determined using vocal exchanges. So you can see the contrast between the social bond networks and the vocal exchange networks. So if we look here, this is Big, Fred, and Ridges. And you can see that they actually spend quite a large amount of time together. They're very close friends. We often observe them consorting females together. But if you look over here, they actually don't share many vocal exchanges together at all. So we can actually see that the social bond network is in fact fairly opposite of the vocal exchange network, which is why we had that negative relationship between bond strength and vocal exchange rate. So all of this together means that our results indicate that vocalizations can actually function as a replacement for physical bonding. So whistles, which can travel hundreds of meters, not only eliminate the need for physical proximity, but they're really cheap to produce. They don't require many calories, and they don't require a costly time investment. So you are able to bond with your other allies quite quickly and efficiently and from a distance. So although males may spend less time together and engage in less affiliative contact behavior with some of their core social unit members, we show here that they instead can use signature whistle exchanges as a low-cost mechanism to maintain those weaker but still really important alliance relationships. So further, we also found that there wasn't a correlation between how vocal a male was and how many vocal exchanges he engaged in, meaning that the vocal exchanges are not simply a byproduct of being a noisy dolphin, but they actually serve an intentional bonding function, and they reserve those vocal exchanges for a specific bonding purpose. And we also reject the raise the stakes strategy as an explanation for these results. The raise the stakes strategy posits that individuals will use a low-cost bonding mechanism to first test the waters of developing a stronger social bond to determine if it is a worthwhile social investment for them. But as I mentioned previously, a lot of the dolphins we used in this study are actually quite old, and these alliances have been stable for decades, so like up to 20 years. So they're unlikely to be testing out new relationships within these already crystallized alliances and among members that they're extremely familiar with. So all of this together supports the social bonding hypothesis and suggests that vocalizations are actually serving a specific bonding purpose. So they can also function as a replacement for physical bonding, which frees up individuals to bond at a distance. And so this particular study provides some of the first evidence for the replacement of physical bonding with vocalizations, as Dunbar first suggested, and it's the first study as well outside of the primate lineage to address this hypothesis. And we hope that this line of research will lead to some new and interesting questions on the origins of complex animal communication. So to wrap everything up, today we've talked about a lot of different mechanisms that our dolphins can use to maintain their friendship over the years. So synchrony is used to strengthen and advertise alliance membership. They use touch or affiliative contact to strengthen and maintain important core social bonds. And then they use vocalizations to strengthen weaker yet still vital core social bonds. So if you'd like more information about the study that I talked about in the last half of the talk, please check out this paper. This is the paper that the study is published in and published in Current Biology. And if you're interested in any of our other research, please check out our websites, which are linked in the talk, or any of our Twitter feeds. We're always posting about new research and stuff like that. So thank you all so much for listening. And if anyone has any questions about anything I've talked about, I am more than happy to take questions.
Much. I am going to steal your screen share for a moment and just let folks do our little wrap up while people submit their last questions. A reminder that you can find all of our webinars, whether they're deep dives or dolphin lessons, on our website, dolphincommunicationproject.org. Just look under the Knowledge Hub. You'll find the webinars. They're also on our YouTube channel. And this was a deep dive, so a bit more technical. We also have dolphin lessons that are geared more toward elementary students and the young at heart. And then if you've watched all of our webinars and you still need more streaming content, you can check out our podcast, The Dolphin Pod, wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, with Emma, we also thank you, our viewers. We would be a bad nonprofit if we didn't remind you how you can support us. You can become a member, give a donation, you can shop for DCP swag, join our director, Kathleen, in the field. If you're looking for good, eco-friendly sunscreen, body products, check out Stream to See and use the promo code DolphinCom and we'll get a donation, no cost to you. And then stay in touch. So just like Emma shared her contact, check out our website, stay in touch by email, on social media, and hopefully you will be a part of conserving dolphins for generations and years to come. And then, of course, a great big thank you to you, Emma. We really appreciate your time. We appreciate all the insight you gave us, and we're ready to get to some questions. I will start with one while we get ourselves organized. Someone had a question about our signature whistles attributed from mothers to calves. I'm wondering if they're asking if they're kind of passed down, if there's a similarity between a calf signature whistle and its mom's.
Yeah, so for that, it depends on the population that you are looking in. So some captive studies have shown that the calf signature whistle does match its mothers or have specific features that are similar to their mothers, but they're also vocal production learners. So they're generating their own signature whistle and they're taking cues from their environment in order to put everything together. So if you have a captive dolphin who's not necessarily exposed to as many sounds as a wild dolphin would be, you might expect that it would be more similar to their partners or their mothers that they're spending a lot of time together with. But in our population, we don't find that. We don't find that trend at all. So being vocal production learners, it means that they can generate new vocalizations and they can put it together in a way that's completely unique to them.
At what age do you find in your study group that the signature whistle is stable?
In our study group, I think it's stabilized around 2 years old.
Cool. Focusing on the sound, we'll stick with sound questions for a minute. Did you find evidence of the males exchanging whistles with the females that they were hurting, or with the whistles, was she quiet?
We only focus on the males, so we don't have any signature whistles for the females, just because, we generally find that they are quite quiet while this is happening. They're not really producing much in the way of sound. And also it takes a lot of time to pinpoint these whistles. And because we generally focus on the males and because we have more behavioral data in order to allow us to pinpoint those whistles, we just find that we don't have enough data to get many female signature whistles. But that's actually an up and coming area of our research. And we hope that we will have more female signature whistles in the future. And that's one of our goals actually for this particular field season, is to go out and dedicate some time to the females, make sure they get the attention they deserve. And hopefully we'll be back in the future with some more female-centric signature whistles and data.
That's fine. It's always good to leave people hanging and know that the science is never done. There's always more to come.
Yeah, exactly.
Shifting away a little bit from sound, do you see that these interactions, these vocalizations, ultimately help the males mate with the females? And in a situation where 3 males are hurting a female, do all 3 males get an opportunity to mate with her?
Yeah, so they actually don't all get the opportunity to mate with the females. So initially, when we observed this alliance structure back in like the early 80s and 90s, we predicted that there would emerge like a leader, so a more dominant male that was actually securing all of the paternities. But actually, a lot of our genetic studies have determined that there is no skew in terms of the reproductive success of the individuals that we observe consorting. So even though only one individual gets to mate with a female at a given time, over the years, it kind of amounts to everyone sharing the same amount of paternities. So in one particular consortship, only one dolphin will gain that paternity and the other 2 won't. But that doesn't mean that later down the line, they can't have another consortship where a different dolphin gets to mate that time. So we've actually, some of our recent genetic studies have determined that there isn't a dominant male in terms of any one male scoring all of the ladies. It's more evenly spread out.
Interesting. Are there any males that aren't in an alliance?
So there are a couple of males that are oddballs, I would say. Typically, the ones that aren't in an alliance are older males whose alliances have unfortunately died off. So we have some dolphins who had some really cool alliances back in the 80s and were being quite awesome at getting all of the females, but unfortunately they've died off and a lot of their members just kind of hang around. We have a really cool study going on right now about attrition. So what happens when all of the males in an alliance pass on and only leave 1 or 2 members? So it's a really interesting it's a really interesting subject in our research, and we hope to find out more about what happens. For the most part, though, the vast majority of like younger male dolphins will form an alliance. Whether they're any good at securing females is another question, but they do generally tend to be social. So even if they're not good at it, they will have an alliance.
Maybe we started our questions kind of fairly specific. Now, broaden it a little bit. How many dolphins are in this Shark Bay population?
So the ones that we see regularly and that we actually have really good amounts of data for in the Eastern Gulf is about 200. But the larger Shark Bay area in the whole bay is, I think, more around 2,000. But that doesn't mean that we see all 2,000 every field season. The ones that we see every year are typically around that 200. The ones that live in the bay that's close to where we launch our boat. We affectionately nickname the area that's a little bit further offshore La La Land, because generally speaking, if we see any dolphins out there, we won't see them again for several years.
Lovely. And that 200 is male and female?
Male and female, yeah.
So within that, kind of what proportion are males, and then how many alliances does that amount to? Or say maybe how many second order alliances are there?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the proportion of males to females, so I don't have like a percentage of the population that's male. I'm sure that exists somewhere, but I don't have that number off the top of my head, and I don't want to say anything that's wrong. But in terms of second order alliances, we do have a fair few. I would say maybe 20. Yeah, some of them are, as I mentioned, a little bit aging and perhaps dying off, not as strong as they once were. And we have some up and coming alliances that are forming. And we got to observe one in the field this past field season that is going to be a really cool young male alliance that might be taking the place of some of the older males. So it's really cool to watch them grow up because, yeah, we do see them year after year.
And look at the value of long-term data collection, people.
Yes. Yeah.
This group of dolphins, do you know how long they live? Someone is wondering if all goes well for them. What's kind of the oldest
if all goes well
you could
for
expect them to be?
Oldest is maybe 40. I think 40 is like the upper limits. I think the females might live a little bit longer, but the males generally live to around 40 years. So yeah, again, they form these alliances in their early teenage years. So anywhere between like maybe 10 to 15 is kind of like prime alliance formation time. And then, yeah, they'll stick with those alliances up until they die. And again, we have a couple of really cool studies going on about attrition. So if there is a single male, do they actually join with another alliance for like the remainder years that they have left? So hopefully there's going to be some really cool research about that as well.
Oh, that's awesome. A lot of DCP's research uses the basis of photo ID. So recognizing individuals just on their natural markings, nicks, scars, and things. Someone is wondering how you actually recognize individual dolphins. So is that similar to what I used to do in the Bahamas, kind of dorsal fin, nicks, scars, things like that?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So it's the shape of that dorsal fin, and our dolphins generally, the males especially, tend to be a little bit aggressive when they have tussles. So their fins generally are extremely distinctive. I remember during my first field season, I was kind of a little bit skeptical. I was like, there's no way you can tell the dolphins apart from being on the boat. Like, surely you have to take the pictures, take them back to the lab, and do the photo ID through the whole catalog to get the individuals. But they're so distinctive, you can tell them apart very easily on the boat. And by the end of my first field season, it was the ones that you see regularly, you can really get them quite quickly. So yeah, I could share my screen and go back and tell you the names of some of the dolphins I used in my pictures, but I don't know if people want that. But yeah,
I think someone actually had asked a question about naming them, but maybe I lost track of that, or it was embedded in another question.
Oh yeah, someone said
so
I noticed
certainly
the dolphins' names.
Yep. Now this is my question.
Yeah.
Obviously, boat-based research, recognizing individuals kind of from that perpendicular angle. When you now collect drone data, are you able to ID individuals from that drone footage, or do you have to kind of have like complementary boat-based IDs?
Yeah, so we do have the complementary boat-based IDs because, yeah, it's really, really hard to tell individuals apart from up top because you can't see the shape of their dorsal fin. So we'll have photo ID data going at the same time that we have the drones up. And then once we're able to establish the positions of the dolphins, at least for a single frame, we can actually employ like video tracking technology. There are these cool programs now where if you tell them where the specific dolphins are, they'll track that individual throughout the footage. So you don't need like a constant input of photo ID data, as long as you can identify the dolphins, once or twice throughout the video from the photo ID, you should be able to track that same individual throughout the rest of the footage using technology. So very cool.
That's super cool. What altitude do you usually fly your drones at?
About 90 meters.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, and I will not let this go down a drone rabbit hole. I promise. Is that challenging, like permits to have added drones to your data collection? The dolphins, do you see reaction from them? Do you keep that altitude in order to stop a reaction from them? What kind of goes into some of that?
Yeah, so Shark Bay is actually a marine protected area. And so getting the permits for that requires a lot of, ethics approval and risk assessments and things like that. That is also one of the benefits of being a long-term study, is that the people in the area know the project quite well. And so we generally find that it's quite easy to renew our permits year after year because they're familiar with the research that we do. And we're in Shark Bay for, 6 months of the year. Yeah, the dolphins generally don't respond to the drone very much. We keep it at 90 meters just, for the safety of everyone involved. And again, just to prevent them from having a scare. They're pretty habituated to people. Shark Bay and the Monkey Maya Resort is a pretty popular tourist destination, especially in the summer, for Australian people. And a lot of times they're out there with, boats and kayaks, and they're generally pretty habituated to people. as in they don't care that we're there. They generally tend to ignore us, which is what we want. So that's good. And yeah, the drones don't really affect that behavior at all either.
Awesome. Thank you for letting me go off on that little tangent.
Of course, yeah, I get super excited
gifting-
about the drones.
Yeah, well, and it's just, you know, I feel like it's a technology that came up really quickly. Like it was kind of there and then it was here. And the
Yeah.
idea of like, you know, taking a helicopter out now to get that view, like you just think of the expense, the carbon footprint, the noise it would make, the water disruption,
Yeah.
and now what can be done with drones, but then also not to take for granted that it's therefore automatically zero impact and we don't have to consider any issues or things like that. So yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think we got to all of our questions. Kathleen, obviously you're welcome to chime in if there's any last minute things you wanted to get in there.
Oh no, I mean I have a list of questions, but I have to reread the paper because I had so many questions about whistle type and vocalization and the females and the males, but that would keep you here all day. And you know, that's not the point of the webinar. So thank you very much.
Of course,
Awesome.
yeah. And yeah, if anyone wants to shoot me another email with more questions, feel free to do so.
Fantastic. Thanks to all of our live viewers. Thanks to everyone who's watching this recorded, wherever you are and whenever you are. We hope the future is going well. And then, of course, the biggest thank you to Emma. Thank you so much for your time.
Of course, yeah. Thanks again for having me. It was such fun.
Bye.